Hey, so welcome to the Trying Scotsman, episode 12.
11! 11! 11! 11! I'll just take his anywhere, you cow!
I wanted to obviously have a bit more of a structured thing and do different things, but it's kind of been sitting on me, and I realise it's been over a month since I last did an episode. But for those that follow me on Twitter and that have been in my streams, I've streamed I think maybe 3 or 4 times since the last podcast episode. So I've kind of started to get back into that. I've got a stream tomorrow where I play Madison for the first time, aiming to start that sort of 9, maybe 10 a.m. GMT. And that's Wednesday, 26th of October, just in case, because obviously it depends when you listen to this. But yeah, my ADHD, or obviously I've not got a diagnosis, so there's a few things I just wanted to kind of talk about that, because I've been talking about it on stream, I've been talking about it a lot on Twitter. I feel like part of what's been making me quite bad with it is maybe not being as open about it, and kind of, I guess, not wanting to put myself in a vulnerable position, whether that's my inner ableist stifling it and wanting to, just kind of, I don't know, the sort of high functioning aspect where, kind of denying that it's an issue, and hoping it goes away when obviously it's not. So there's a couple of things I want to mention. The first one is I discovered a podcast, which is the ADHD Adult UK podcast. I've listened. Can't even fucking speak. I've listened to a few episodes, and there's been so many things that I've struggled with, not just recently, we're going back to my teens, and I just put it down to, typical sort of character quirks, traits, anxiety and depression, which obviously I've been struggling with for decades now. And so many of these things can be attributed to ADHD. Now, I'm not saying, and I don't know, and I'm not trying to convince myself that it is ADHD, because again, without a diagnosis, I might be ADD. There could be other things going on. But it's just, it's an eye-opening journey, discovering certain things where I struggle to visualize things. I can kind of conjure an image in my head, and they're there for a split second and then they vanish. When you do guided meditation, and it's it kind of asks you to, for example, visualize a bouncing red ball. I can see it just for a flash. And the way I kind of describe that to people is when you're watching maybe a horror movie or something where people are having flashbacks, or they have a vision and you just see snippets like that. It's there and then it's gone. Sometimes it's replaced by something else, which again I'm thinking is maybe the ADHD, because my brain is then shooting to something else, and then it'll visualize that. But again, it's there for a flash and then it's gone, and then it usually goes to black. I do have an inner monologue, because I was having I was talking to a friend on Facebook, just through comments on a post, and he doesn't have an inner monologue, which I don't know what that must be like. The way my brain is, that sounds lush, because all I hear is my thoughts. They just never fucking stop. I'm trying to sleep, but they don't stop. The trouble is, when I've described that to neurotypical people, they've looked at me as if I'm crazy, I'm hearing voices, and then of course there's the jokes about fucking serial killing and looking at the stars and shit like that. And that's not helpful. And I think at the moment I'm very against, if I can help it, talking to anyone that is neurotypical because they just don't get it. And it's incredibly exhausting. It's draining. And it's very stressful living it without having the burden of trying to convey something to someone that just doesn't get it. And they'll trivialize it and they'll be like, oh yeah, I get that. Or I know someone that's got that. It's like, yeah, but that's not it. You're not grasping that. This is more than that. Forgetfulness. Loads of people forget things. That's normal. But the level of forgetfulness, the fact that I can literally think of something and a second later it's gone. The frustration I get when I can't get my words out and I start hitting my head because I can't stop myself. It's like almost like Tourette's to a degree. Obviously, I'm not comparing myself to Tourette's, and I know that's a completely separate thing, and I'm not saying I've got that because I'm 100% sure I don't. But it's just like these physical, not tics because they're not tics, but these physical things I do when I'm overwhelmed. I get very handsy, like I get very animated, kind of like on a Kevin Smith level where hands are just constantly moving when I'm expressing myself, like right now. But when I get frustrated and I can't get my words out because I know they're there, I just, like the brain and mouth link it's like the bridge has gone up and the words are just queuing waiting for the bridge to come back down. And obviously you're in the middle of a conversation, a sentence, and you can't get it. And it's, people are waiting. And obviously some people, like especially with my kids, because I get really frustrated, like when I'm trying to explain something to them and I can't get the words, and then they just carry on. And it's like, I'm still talking to you. I haven't finished just because I can't get words out. And obviously then there's the stammering and everything like that because the train of thought has just gone. And then it sounds like I've got a stutter. I don't have a stutter. I don't have any sort of issue there. It's just obviously when the words cannot make it to my mouth in time. And maybe that's because I speak too fast sometimes. But I've noticed it, especially when I'm speaking slow. I think obviously if I'm talking really fast, my issue then is where like words might merge and I create new words by smashing them together. And then that causes its own problems because obviously people take the piss and whatnot. And sometimes I'll take the piss. Well, more often than not, I'll take the piss out of myself because I'll be like, what the fuck is that? I just did it earlier. So I kind of forgot where I was going with this. But anyway, I discovered this podcast. There's a lot of things. Christmas. I absolutely hate Christmas. I've got kids. I'm not brilliant at Christmas time. I never have been. And that seems to be quite a common thing with people with ADHD because obviously it's the overwhelming side of things. It's the socializing, maybe having to be around people you're not normally around. All the things that I hate throughout the year, but condensed into a couple of one day or a couple of days around that period. It's just incredibly difficult, and it's been good to find this podcast because there's a Discord attached to it as well, where I'm talking to like-minded people. Like for the most part, we're talking about video games and stuff, like in the games channel. Like last night, talking a lot about horror games like Alien and stuff like that. But it's just good to have, because I don't really have in real life. I don't have anybody that I can talk to about it. All the people that are kind of in tune with what I'm experiencing, it's all online communication, whether it be people I do know in real life, but through technology, like I used to work with them or whatever, and it's through Facebook conversations and DMs and stuff like that. People I've met through Twitch. Obviously my partner Heather, I can talk to her, but obviously she doesn't have ADHD, which is probably a good thing because I dread to think what it'd be like if both of us did, especially if we were like exactly the same or completely opposite. But this is the other thing that it kind of blows my mind, and it makes it harder to explain to people because things manifest in different ways across different people. Like, I typically don't lose things. For the most part, I don't lose things. I know where things should be, and if they're not where they should be, and it wasn't me that touched them, I get very irate. I get very stressy. I tend, like, when I was younger, I used to be very neat. Not to the OCD degree, but I used to be quite neat. As I've gotten older, things go in places where I know where they are. They're in a pile, they're tucked away in a cupboard or a drawer, and I know that's where they are. But if someone has moved them, I lose my shit, because that is exactly where I knew it was going to be. I have no idea where someone else would think to put something, because I don't think like them. This was the logical place I put it. Why are you moving it? You know? Obviously, there are times where maybe I put something down because I get distracted. Like, you know, car keys, for example. I realise, right, I better go for a pee before I go. I put the car keys down. Or, you know, whatever, my bottle of water, can of iron brew, whatever. My vape probably is the easiest one because it's harder to spot. And so I put it down, but then say I come out of the toilet and I don't know, I realise, oh wait a minute, the cats need feeding, or I need to put fresh water down for the cats, or Heather calls me to do something, or, you know, I something takes me away from going straight back to where I put the thing, and then I forget where I put the thing. So I'm not losing it as such. It's exactly where I left it. It's just because so many things happened in between what I thought was going to be right. Toilet, grab, go, has then been like toilet, kitchen, living room, upstairs, and obviously then it fuels more, because if I'm running late as a result of all this to-ing and fro-ing, again, my brain starts to struggle, and I forget where I might have put something, because I forget where I was, because, you know, where I know for a fact I was only meant to have been in 2 places. I've now been in 5. So I don't know if I'm assuming there's bound to be plenty of people that can relate to that. But yeah, because it doesn't present itself in the exact same way for everyone, that makes it even harder to explain it to a neurotypical. Because say this neurotypical person knows someone, and then they're like, well, but you don't meet what they are. Like, because neurotypicals categorize, they pigeonhole. And I think it's just human nature. We all do it to a degree. And obviously you try to rationalize, but the trouble is here, you're trying to rationalize the irrational. It's a losing battle. Some things you just cannot explain. Some things just are. Obviously there's a lot of research that has gone into all these mental ailments and quirks and whatever else, and they're not definitive because it depends on the sample base, and obviously as time changes, and then you've got other things like personal traumas and stuff. Like, the thing is, I don't think I could come out and say I've really experienced any trauma in my life, but I have. If I look at what you truly categorize and classify as trauma, I have experienced trauma, but I would never really openly say, yeah, I've suffered trauma in my life, because for me it's just normal. It's like when you have to explain your job to somebody and you play it down because you don't feel it's all that fancy. It's not all that fancy. So like, obviously when you've got to apply for another job or whatever, and you've got to kind of ham it up a little bit, it's difficult to make something so basic, like, say for example, filing, one of the most boring tasks you can ever do, to sort of glamorize that. So yeah, it is very difficult, and obviously then there's the inner ableist in me that plays things down, and it's like, no, things aren't quite as bad, because it's easier in a way, although it's harder in the long run. Short term, it's easier to make out that you're, I'm doing air quotes, normal, because to say otherwise to somebody who doesn't understand it, it just leads to more questions, it leads to more pressure, it leads to you feeling judged. There's the anticipatory, I think I'm pronouncing that right, anxiety, which I'm suffering from right now because I've got things going on that I need to deal with. And part of my problem is I bury my head in the sand, and I think a lot of us do. Where we bury our head in the sand, and we know it's not going to go away. But I think there's that thing that, you know, something will right itself, something else will happen, external to us, and it'll make everything okay. And maybe that's something from childhood where, you know, like you're having some issues and you know that your mum will sort it, or, you know, your friends will take care of it, or whatever. And maybe that's like a lingering thing. Maybe there's part of my brain that hasn't fully adapted, because this is the other thing. I realised that I potentially was misdiagnosed when I was 17. I've mentioned this on Twitter. And one thing you'll notice, I've noticed it myself just while I've been talking to you, I haven't said anywhere near as much as I normally do, because I kind of know what I'm passionate about what I'm talking about. So when I was 17, I went to the doctor because obviously I knew I wasn't feeling right. I felt something was off, and I filled in this sort of multiple choice thing, which kind of, the outcome was that I was borderline depressed, so I ended up on citalopram, and so I did that. I think I was on it for about 6 months, because I was told, like, obviously it takes months to build up in your bloodstream and this, that, and the other. And then maybe about sort of 7 months, 8 months, I think I stopped. They were playing fuck with me. They were. I was pretty confident, and I still am, that they were fucking up my stomach. So instead of going back, because obviously they say don't cease prescription medication without consulting your GP, I couldn't be arsed with that. It seemed like a hassle. And so I went cold turkey. I didn't reduce my dosage, I just stopped. And I never went back until, my mid-20s, when the whole depression and anxiety was revisited, reconfirmed, and I ended up on... I did say citalopram didn't really agree with me, so I ended up on things like sertraline, mirtazapine. I think I had something else, I can't really remember. But ADHD wasn't really something we knew of back when I was a kid, and I'm not that old. Like, I'm 38, so almost 40. We'd heard of it, but this is the thing, and I'm guilty of it. It was the ignorance that it was only something that kids had, and typically those were attached to kids with behavioural problems, and sometimes it felt more like it was an excuse for bad behaviour and bad parenting rather than an actual thing. Obviously, as I've grown older, I've come to realise how wrong that is, how damaging that is. I do feel that maybe some people do play that, because obviously getting a diagnosis is hard, and like I say, I keep saying my ADHD, but it's just because that's easier to say than my undiagnosed thing. But I do make it quite clear I haven't got a diagnosis. I'm not saying for certain I have got ADHD. I said this at the start of the podcast. It's just easier for me to say something that's shorter, especially. But if I hadn't been the way I'd been, and I'd gone back and I'd persisted and said, look, I don't think that, because I did disagree with the depression side of things. Because I was 17. What teenager doesn't think about killing themselves or like just not existing, not necessarily suicide, but just ceasing to be? That, to me, that's pretty normal. I think most teenagers go through some element of that. I always said that I'd seen behind the curtain. Like you're born, you live, you die. There's nothing grandeur about that. There's nothing brilliant. And obviously, I guess that came from a place where I was struggling because I didn't, I struggled with shyness. I struggled with socializing. I struggled with all these things that I maybe didn't understand, but just put down to typical teenage angst, which then has lasted for life. But then that's the other thing, obviously, with ADHD, and I think there is a massive misconception with it in that people just assume it's kids. Those kids grow up. Like, the ADHD doesn't just think, oh, right, he's turned 21 now, let's go. It sticks with you. I think it's just because you never really need to challenge yourself. Unless you know someone and have quite a close relationship with someone, you never really need to concern yourself with that. It's like a lot of things, and that's where privilege, I guess, comes in. I'd love for a day just to kind of experience a day as a neurotypical, just to see what it's like, because it sounds fucking brilliant compared to what I've got to go through. And I don't even think I have that bad a hand dealt to me. Like there's people that are far worse. Like obviously I think I class myself as high functioning, which sounds a bit too elaborate. Barely functioning, I think, is more apt. But obviously, for someone that is able to work and maintain to a degree relationships, and kind of pass off as half normal, again air quotes, that's high functioning. I'm able to carry out my job. I might have difficulties in doing it, but I'm still able to do it. There's some people that they can't, like constant meltdowns. A highlight of their day sometimes is just being able to get out of bed and wash and, maybe paint the living room that they've been meaning to do for years. That's an accomplishment, and that should be celebrated, because again, everyone is different. But like, I know for a fact that there's people that will be like, painting the living room, like try doing a whole house. And that's where the neurotypical responses come in and are very harmful, because your sense of accomplishment is completely then overwritten and stomped over by someone. It's like when you've got that friend, and I hope none of you are this person, that if you've done something, they've gone one up. They've done better. You bought a car, they've bought two. You've been on holiday once this year, they've been 5 times. Just all shit like that. So, like, I am sharing a lot. I'm sharing, like, infographics, memes. There is a funny side to it. And I don't want to be all serious about it, because obviously I have to live with it. Other people have to live with it. We have a sense of humour. What I don't want is that to alienate people. Just because you don't get it doesn't mean I don't like you. It's just, obviously we are different, and we've got to celebrate our differences. We've got to understand each other's differences. I'm trying to understand mine, but at the same time, I'm trying very fucking hard because at the moment there's a lot of self-reflection going on. There's a lot of things internal where I'm shutting down, and I'm having to impact my life with, impact my relationship with Heather, my kids, because I can't process everything all at once. So in order for me to wrap my head around some things with me, I've got to isolate myself. I've got to shut down. I've got to take the time. And I'm trying to get better at not doing that, or doing that for a much lesser period. because it isn't all about me. And I know that, and I appreciate that, and I don't expect that. But at the same time, it's like trying to find this balance of how do I do self-care, as well as be able to maintain all these other things. Like, you know, to me, my plate feels bigger, so that one's the more obvious one I've got to keep spinning. These other ones I know I've still got to do, but there's less weight to them. Like that, I think it's probably a shit analogy, but I think that's kind of like how my brain works, in that in order for me to be there for others, I've got to get myself out of where I am. I've got to help myself. It is a very difficult position to be in, because I'm so used to kind of putting others before me, leaving myself to just, exist, and then eventually it'll come to a head. Whereas now, on a daily basis, I'm dealing with things, or trying to, and there's it's kind of like accountability. I've got to sort my shit out in order to be present and function for all this other stuff that I've got to, or I'm expected to do. And obviously it's trying to reduce the impact that all these things have on me, where it's draining. And obviously it's affecting my mood and my sleep and all these ramifications. And I, knowing that this is going to be a very lengthy process, and if I want to shorten that, I'm looking at something that I just cannot afford to do, and go private. Because my private healthcare, I think I've mentioned it here. I've certainly mentioned it on Twitch and Twitter. I can't afford it. You're looking at hundreds or thousands of pounds, and that's that's without even knowing if I'll ever need to be medicated, and what the costs are going to be there to find the right dosage. And I think they call it titration, where you've got to find the right med, the right dosage, and obviously you've got to go through that for a period of time to try them out. It's not like a miracle fucking pill or whatever that I can just do. I think CBT only gets me so far. Because I've been introduced, and I've been doing that since I met with Mind, well, before Mind actually, which was at least 8 years ago, possibly longer now. So yeah, it is very difficult, and I don't even know if this podcast is going to make any sense now. I don't want to make it too long, because it just feels like I've been non-stop, and I need to come off. But I'll try and do maybe like a more structured thing, but this was just to like speak my mind, get it off my chest, and just kind of let people know what's going on, because obviously I have been very unavailable for various things, like obviously streaming and the podcast and that, and I want to do more. I do. It's just very difficult. Like there was a point today where I just didn't think this was even going to happen. I'm doing this on my lunch break, so yeah. Obviously, this isn't the type of one to enjoy as such, but I hope it kind of sheds a bit more light. Maybe if you're going through something similar, you're not alone. If you know someone that's going through something similar, that again, they're not alone. There's so many resources out there to help and kind of guide people. It is overwhelming, because it's remembering where they are, remembering that they exist, finding the time to do it. Like I've been getting reminders to register to vote since I've moved, which obviously was almost 2 years ago now, and only yesterday did I sort that out. I wrote it down on a to-do list, and I did it. There's things that I know I should put on a to-do list, but I just know they're going to be very difficult, so I haven't put them down, and that's a me problem. I need to find a way to overcome that. That there's things I've had to do today that I really wish I didn't have to. I feel I shouldn't have to. But ultimately, it's been really getting at me, and I've had to do it. And now I'm just dreading what the aftermath of that is going to be. It's that anticipatory anxiety again, So yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. I will try and get another one done for next week. I don't want to say cause this is the fine line I'm finding I'm having to kind of straddle, in that I don't want to promise something that I can't keep to myself, and I can't keep to you. I know there's a few people that listen on the regular. I've had people message me and say to me that they enjoy my podcast and they enjoy listening, and it's good to have on in the background while they work, or just while they're busy doing other stuff. So obviously all the support I really do truly appreciate, and I owe you more. But obviously then it's that additional pressure that I'm kind of putting on myself, and the expectation, and then where I tend to go is the other way. I'm like, right, there's this expectation of me. I don't feel like I'm fit to do it, so I end up not, and then I just take longer to get myself back into the seat to do it. And that's obviously, like with the streaming, it was just it became easier talking myself out of doing it. And I've enjoyed coming back. I've been playing things that I've been holding off on because I've only wanted to do them on stream. Well, I wanted to do them off stream, but I've only wanted them for the stream side for content and stuff, which is obviously another reason why I've been sitting on Madison. That sounds wrong, but because that's something I think that if that game makes me jump, because it's meant to be scary as fuck, if that gets that, then that's results for content. Because trying to jump scare me, and I don't know if that's part of my sort of emotional dysregulation, where I can't factor in fear as well as others, like, because I don't really jump at things. I don't have the conventional fears. My fears are more based on disappointing people, and which is ironic because obviously people might be waiting for a podcast each week and it doesn't fucking happen. But like seeing the disappointment in people's faces and hearing it in their tone and stuff like that, But yeah, anyway, thank you for listening, and obviously enjoy the lack of ums in this one. But yeah, I will catch you on the next one, and just enjoy your week, and hopefully I'll see you on my streams. I'm aiming to do Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Although I might just stagger it to do Wednesday and Friday just so there's no burnout, but we'll see how it goes. It depends on everything else going on in life. But yeah, have a good one.